In today's video we're going to be diving back into some more Space Marines 2, and this time taking on the absolute beast of a class that is the Sniper. This, in my opinion, is probably the best single target class in the game and is a whole bunch of fun to play and can be amazing at that single target damage, focusing mainly on headshots as well as picking up a little bit of multi-target damage as well for a bit of our weapon tree. This, in my opinion, is definitely a top tier class and can really help you to tackle some of the most annoying ranged enemies in the game or some of the tougher ones where you want to dwindle down their health very fast. Now I must admit, I tend not to pick snipers in games because I'm absolutely awful with them, but I really enjoyed this class as it's got a mixture of kind of damage, survivability, it's great with its pickups, and I found it a lot easier to use because you've got a bit of leniency with those headshots. Now remember, you do only have 2 for this armour class, so you are definitely a little bit on the squishier side, and for our loadout we've gone with 1 las fusel rifle, a bolt pistol, and of course the combat knife. I found this setup absolutely ideal for tackling almost all of the enemies in the game, and absolutely excelled when you're in those missions facing those Chaos Marines. But we also managed to pick up a few things in our skill tree that allowed us to take on Tyranids very nicely as well. Now going over to our most integral part of this build, and that's going to be the first weapon, your primary, and for this one we've picked the Gafala Crusade. This has a very nice high ammo count, hits like an absolute truck, and the only real downside to it I'd say is probably its rate of fire, which unfortunately is locked at 1. For the perk tree, you're going to want to pick up this first perk just here, as it's going to give you 20% extra to your ammo reserves, helping again with your overall bullet count. Then we're going to pick up Adamant Restoration, which is an absolutely amazing perk. All this means when you've got low health, so 30% or under, when you toggle off of your weapon to your secondary weapon, then back again, you're going to be getting more ammo into that weapon's magazine. Currently, you can keep doing this over and over again, essentially making sure that you have permanent ammo in the weapon. However, I'm not sure if they'll fix this later on or if it's an intended feature for this perk. Over once more, and we've got Amplification. The radius of your beam weapons is going to increase by 10%. Like I said, this gives you absolutely amazing leniency. Even if you slightly miss a headshot, sometimes you can still pick it up, or you can hit several targets at once with this. Up to Headhunter, we're going to be getting 10% extra headshot damage because obviously we are a sniper, pick up as much as you can, and then Amplification once more, allowing us to get another 10% to our beam radius. Over to Great Might, this one's absolutely amazing because it means we're going to get 10% extra damage against terminus enemies, so any of those named ones, bosses, the toughest ones. Fast regeneration means that taking out an enemy is going to increase our armor 0.5 seconds faster every time we do it, and of course another one that we want is going to be Headhunter again, giving us 20% extra damage headshot overall. And finally, over to our last one, helping us with a little bit of multi-target and of course single target if you can manage to pull it off, and that's going to be Brutal Rampage. After taking out 3 enemies or more with just 1 shot, you gain 25% damage for 5 seconds. I found myself picking this up very often because of the radius increase, and then we can switch it over and get that damage buff once more, really helping us out to take out multi-targets as well as focus on our single targets. The las fusel in general is absolutely amazing in this game. It does some really high damage, it's great like I said against things such as zoanthropes or any kind of ranged enemy, or just something that's got high armor or high health, and headshots are definitely a must if you're using this weapon. Over to our secondary, and we're going to use the Aphelion Liberation Alpha because it's got high ammo count, really helps us to get the job done if we are ever in those times of need, and our primary is slightly dwindled down with ammo. Not going to happen much, but when it does, this is a great alternative. For our perk tree, we're going to pick up Great Might, giving us 10% extra damage against terminus enemies. Then, just along from here, we're going to pick up Retaliation. After a perfect dodge, now we're going to have 25% more damage for 5 seconds. We actually use perfect dodge quite a lot in this build, so it works out really nicely. Once again, we're going to go over and pick up Iron Grip. After a gun strike, you're now going to have 35% for 5 seconds of reduced recoil on the weapon. Divine Might again, giving our damage increase by 10%, and then Extended Magazine is going to allow us to have 15% of extra magazine size. Up to Headhunter, again, this is focusing really on that kind of headshot damage, so pick that up for 10%, and Elite Hunter is going to make you deal 50% more damage for 5 seconds whenever you manage to take out a Majoris or higher level with a melee. Honestly, this one's a bit hit and miss. I don't usually tend to use it too often, but if you did want to finish off some of those red staged enemies, then you definitely can for the buff to the damage. And last but definitely not least, picking up the last one of our headshots, we're going to have Headhunter once more, giving us another 10% more damage whenever we're hitting those vital headshots. I found this to be an absolutely awesome secondary, and even though we don't really run out of our primary too often, if we do, it's a great backup, or just great in general if you're trying to conserve a bit of ammunition or dwindle down some foes at slightly closer range. Over to our last weapon, and for this one we're going to be using the combat knife. This one's going to be the Aphelion Liberation Alpha, and I found this the best overall because it gives you a nice window of opportunity because it's a parrying blade. For the perk tree we're going to have Perpetual Strength just here, boosting our melee damage by 5%, and then we're going to pick up Kinetic Energy. With every heavy attack we're going to get 3% extra damage all the way up to 30%. This can be nice to put in the mix, but overall I do find myself going in with a shoulder barge more often, but if you need a bit more damage and clutch then it can come in handy. Just over from here and we're going to grab ourselves 5 more melee damage because anytime you can pick that up is well worth having. And like I said earlier, shoulder bash, absolutely amazing, running with a charge, give them a little bash, leaving them prone to attack quite easily, or just allowing you to do whatever you need to do afterwards. Tyrannid Slayer is going to give us 10% extra damage against any Tyrannid based enemies. Reeling Blow is going to mean that enemies hit by your Whirlwind Slash deal 50% less damage for 4 seconds, with a cooldown of 10 seconds. And the last ones we're going to be picking up, just nice and easy to round off the build if you did need it and you're taking on enemies close range. It's great to have Extremist Slayer for 15% extra increase to all Extremist based enemies, and then Terminus Slayer giving us 20% extra to all Terminus based enemies. This rounds off your build really nicely and allows you to have medium, long range and some nice parrying options. Over to the perks tree, and probably the most important part of the sniper is going to be his camo cloak. This as standard is going to mean you can camouflage and it's going to hide you from enemies until you break cover with an attack. Also, it's going to mean you get 10% extra headshot damage, and anytime you can pick that up it's well worth having in a sniper class. Over to our first perk, and we're going to have Block Break. This is great because it means now you've got 25% of your damage going through those enemies that are kind of shielded, or making it where you usually can't get any damage to them whatsoever. Over to Vantage Point, and with this one, when you remain stationary for 2 seconds, your primary weapon damage is going to go up by 20%. This is great, especially if you're going to be using camouflage before it, as it can really boost up your damage nicely. Lethal Efficiency, and this one is absolutely amazing. Killing more than one enemy with one shot from your lad's rifle is going to restore 1 charge. This can be absolutely amazing in those Tyrannid fights, or anytime you can pick up extra few enemies to take out with 1 shot. And it can often mean you see yourself having that sniper rifle very often with high or max ammo. Over once more, and this time we're going to be looking at Team Perk. In my opinion, very possibly the strongest team perk in the game. A headshot kill restores your ability charge by 10% for any squad member. If you've got some members on your team who have got some really nice kind of signature abilities, for example you're tactical, then this can really help your team out and you're going to have your abilities up very often. And obviously with yourself, you're going to be using this to try and get into camo by just focusing on headshots overall. Over to Renewal, and a headshot restores camo's cloak charge by 5%, again adding on top of just how quickly we're getting it back, which is quite ridiculous now. And then Targeted Shot, the first ranged attack that breaks from cloak, deals 75% more damage. Even if you've got to take a bit of time, don't worry, remember stand still for 2 seconds helps you to get another bit of 20%, another 20% extra damage on top of that. So just focus on those headshots, especially on those tough elites or boss enemies. Lingering Concealment. After performing an attack that breaks camo, you now stay hidden for 2 extra seconds. I found this really helpful in a lot of missions, especially the ones, for example mission 2, when you're going to be planting bombs and such, because otherwise I found my health dwindling down because you break cover and can get shot at from behind very often without this. And lastly, we're going to go with Evasion. This last signature skill means that you're going to have a perfectly timed dodge, put you straight into camo cloak, and it's going to last for 5 seconds with a cooldown of 15 seconds. Overall, this just means that your class can be in camo a ridiculous amount of time. It's a lot of fun to play, and even if you're like me and don't particularly like using parries with a class such as this, then you can try and time your dodges right, do an effective headshot afterwards and get the extra damage that way. Use this class to hit headshots as much as possible in order to go into your camouflage as much as possible, and you'll have an absolute blast playing it, focus firing and taking out some of the biggest baddies in the game. Overall, I've really enjoyed the sniper class. It's not usually my cup of tea, I must admit. I'm usually terrible with them, but for this one I found it had a little bit of leniency because of the extra radius we picked up, and felt really nice to play. But yeah, a great class in general. I'd rank it as A rank overall. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. There'll be a lot more content away from me. As always, Ruthless Gaming, take care. I'll see you on next day.